Ladies and gentlemen, later this year in 2021, Magnus Carlsen will defend his World Championship title against Russian superstar Ian Alexandrovich Nepomniachtchi, better known to the non-Russian speaking audience as Nepo. This video will be fully dedicated to Ian, and I'm going to give you a background of who he is as a person, as a chess player, and, more importantly, some of his best games. Ian was born July 14th, 1990. He learned the game of chess at 4.5 years old, and he immediately started winning all sorts of youth tournaments. He was winning the European Youth Championships, and he even won the World Youth Under 12, where he actually played Magnus Carlsen for the first time and defeated him. In 2006, Ian was introduced to the video game Dota, and he became such an avid player that later, in 2011, he helped the team win the 2011 Aces Winter Cup. And on top of that, he likes Hearthstone, along with Russian Grandmaster Peter Svidler. They've actually been known to play and give feedback to the beta testers of the game. In 2007, Ian earned all of his Grandmaster norms and became a GM at the age of 16-17. But by then, Magnus Carlsen already broke into the 2700 club and was on his way to becoming a 2800 level player. The big statistic that goes around is the fact that Nepo has beaten Magnus 4-1 in classical games, but the truth is, they have not played that many against each other over the years, because at the highest level, there's really an invitation process. A lot of people get invited to these closed tournaments, and that's why Magnus has played Fabiano Caruana or Levan Ranyan 30, 40, even 50 times, whereas I don't even think he's played Nepo in classical 15 times. Now, before I show you a few of Nepo's best games and his playing style, let's take a look at the ratings. These are the classical rankings as of May 2021. Nepo is the 4th highest rated classical player in the world. Magnus Carlsen is number 1. These are the top rapid players in the world. You see Nepo is number 9 and Carlsen, unsurprisingly, is number 1. And these are the top blitz players in the world. Now, it's important to note that for all the online chess that was played in 2020, Rapid and Blitz, none of those got rated. I don't know why, but we've never rated online chess to that extent, so that's just the reality. Now, the last statistic that I have for you is of their last 44 matches. Magnus has 12 wins, Nepo has 11, and there's 21 draws. So in the shorter time controls, it's anybody's game. Okay, now let's talk chess. Ian has a very aggressive, dynamic playing style. He plays extremely fast, and they say that he's constantly on the lookout for kind of little tactics and ideas and different openings. With white, he generally prefers e4. With black, the Sicilian defense, the Grunfeld, which is everything that you're going to get at top level. The game that I'm showing you is the game from the Olympiad, the final round of the 2018 Olympiad of all the countries. Nepo's on board 1 for Russia, or board 2. One of the top boards, and he's playing the one of the top Frenchmen. He plays knight f3, and I just said he plays d5, but he does this to surprise his opponent, now e3. This is not very common. It's become very popular at the higher level now, and the whole point is you play kind of the Queen's Gambit-esque style, but without ever moving the queen's pawn. And what you do is you wait. You see, you're waiting for this move d4 based on how black sets up. In fact, you wait and play b3. There's some positions you don't even move the d-pawn at all because you want to keep this diagonal open for your bishop. Now here, black has a choice. c5 is generally considered to be the most annoying move, and Nepo takes on d5, inviting his opponent to take with one of these two pieces. If black takes with the pawn, then white is considered to have a pretty pleasant position here after a move like d4. This will oftentimes result in a trade and an isolated pawn position, with white having a dark squared bishop that's very strong. So Bacrot plays knight takes d5 instead, and here Ian plays a move. Well, when I ask you all, what does a super grandmaster play when they don't know what to play? It's also the modern computer era, the move h4, which just looks so bogus. But let me tell you the point. So in a lot of these positions, this diagonal is open and your queen stands on one of these two squares. Oftentimes, so does your bishop, because again, you've kind of left this open. This bishop is going to be super useful for the attack, and why you play h4 is to play the move knight g5. And frankly, even if you get taken, your rook opens up. So these flank pawn pushes, when you do it, you lose in 6 moves. When they do it, they might lose, but it'll take a little bit longer. But more often than not, they create something beautiful, right? So b6, Bacrot's trying to develop on this side of the board. And again, now Ian plays queen b1, which is just such an absurd looking move. The whole point of this is to play knight g5. Like, that is the threat. If black just plays bishop b7, knight g5 is coming, and you will, you know, create some sort of attack on that side of the board. So Bacrot plays h6, preventing knight to g5. But the problem is that now this is something called a hook, and a pawn in front of the king like that can be targeted with the next pawn. I mean, why develop? Like h4, queen b1, g4, some crazy stuff. I mean, I have a person play like this against me in Blitz. I'm reporting them to chess.com. Okay? Bishop b7, and now Jan once again plays an absolutely bogus looking move. That move, well, there's some pressure lurking, so rook h3. I mean, like, what? You can only make noises to appreciate this stuff. And now, well, what was the whole point of white's attack? G5, of course. G5. It would be death to black if black took, because, again, you have this lurking, so you really just can't allow that at all. So, of course, Bacrot plays h5, trying to shut it all down on that side of the board. Okay, well, bishop d3. I mean, it's everything we talked about. These three pieces are ready to go. You will play g6 at an opportune moment, and if you can give this pawn away, then you will play rook g3, and boom, hammer away with another piece. So now Bacrot plays knight before looking for the bishop. He could play knight c3, bishop c3, but the problem is if he just rushes for a bunch of trades, then he will just end up in a very passive position. Jan can transition from attack to just being better from a positional standpoint. So he goes for the bishop, and now Nepo plays bishop h7, says you cannot have my bishop. And bishop back to e4, trading it for the bishop rather than the knight. This king move deflects the king away from the defense of certain squares. Could be good. Let's also not forget this pawn in the future could be kind of weak. And it puts the king on the same diagonal as this bishop. As crazy as that sounds, that's the whole point. Knight back to d5. Okay, great. Now Jan says, how can I activate two pieces at the same time? Knight back to e2, activating my bishop, and this knight is coming for h5. And who's going to guard that pawn? Who's going to guard that pawn? You can't play g6 because I forced your king to move. Okay, f5. So Bacrot says I had enough, time to lash out. Now, yeah, you know, beginners oftentimes will play en passant when they can. In this case, you should, because again, the whole point is that you keep adding attackers. The rook is coming, the knight is coming, this knight is coming. So we have knight takes f6, looking for the bishop, and now knight to g5. Now I am okay making this trade because I'm threatening mate. And if you play knight f6, I'm going to take your bishop. Okay, so he has to take the knight. I take. I apologize. If takes, which looks like, you know, you're going to get this, then, I mean, I'm just going to play rook g3, and you die on g7. So instead of that, Bacrot plays knight f4, attacking the queen, the rook, and the knight. The problem is that I can just play queen takes bishop, and that is literally checkmate. So you cannot take the rook. Instead, we have knight d3, king f1, knight b2. Okay, great. Wonderful. I've gotten your bishop. But now rook takes h5 check, king g8. And here, just an absolutely savage move. Feel free to pause here if you'd like to find it. But Nepo finishes the game off in true style. And he plays the move g6. And this is death because the king cannot move. And for example, if you were to play a move like rook to f6, trying to take this pawn, the backup plan that Nepo has here to win the game is to bring his queen all the way back here. And rook h8. And the entire justification of the whole opening, all the way back to the move h4, which at the time of the game was a novelty. So that's the final kind of nail in the coffin of how beautiful this game is. h4 had never been played. No one had ever seen this position, and Nepo uncorks it and crushes Bacrot, who's like 2,700, high 2,600 grandmaster from France in 20 moves. Like nothing. I mean, just like nothing. And Jan does this all the time. Like, that's the thing about Jan. He does this all the time. For example, he also played, and this is actually a game taken straight from the candidates, the first round of the candidates tournament, like the one that just recently concluded. He was playing with the black pieces against Anish Giri, and this was a symmetrical English. And Nepo came out with this queen b6 line, challenging the knight in the center, engaging in total warfare early on, like knight e5, bishop f4, knight g4, attacking f2, a6, and pieces were flying all over the board. And we got to this position out of the opening. And the craziest thing is Nepo doesn't play this. Nepo plays the Grunfeld. So he came in fully prepared, like up to the teeth, got this position, and then from here on out proceeded to play just an absolutely ludicrous game. Look at this. He sacrifices his knight to play rook a3 and attack Anish. Okay? Anish defends. Now look at this pawn avalanche. Look at this position that we get out of the opening. Like b4, b takes c4, the potential to just have all of these pawns. Nepo ends up with the opportunity to have. And as this game progresses, you see that he's able to navigate the complexity and the imbalance of the position very well. Takes, queen b1 was played by Anish. This game feels ages ago, although it happened in early 2020, but these were pre-pandemic times. But b5, like, look at Jan just throwing everything at him. If c takes b5, you get c2 coming, okay? If pawn takes d5, you have c2 coming. If queen takes d5, bishop b7 with the x-ray. Like, he's so good at just these completely insane positions. And he's constantly up 40, 50 minutes on the clock. That's the thing. If you ever watch a Nepo game in classical chess, he is constantly up on time. This game, he managed to outmaneuver Anish in the crazy complexities of the position. There was all sorts of tactics flying around. And we got a queen versus rook and bishop endgame. And for the next 40 moves, Jan just asserted himself. He just improved his position slowly, understanding that the only way to make progress was going to be by breaking apart Giri's defenses with his pawns, even at the cost of some pawns, because they would be so important. And it ended up having Anish sacrifice the bishop to get into potentially drawn endgame. But it didn't matter. He just kept applying the pressure. All he needed was one pawn, because queen versus rook is a win for the queen, but queen versus rook and pawn is usually a draw if you can create a fortress. And Jan just kept pushing, improving his position slowly, taking away the queen squares. And ultimately, the way this was decided, this was so nice to watch live. He won the h-pawn, and the most impressive way to win this game was the final move of this game, which was this. Queen to d3. This is how you win queen and pawn versus rook and pawn. You'll notice Anish is just trying to move back and forth, but Jan navigates the opening brilliantly, plays a super dynamic, crazy game the whole time, up 40 minutes on the clock. And around this point when Anish resigned, I think Jan had like 50 minutes and Anish had like 2. So this was a huge game in the candidates because Jan won with black in the opening round against Anish, which everybody forgets about because then the chess boom happened. But this is the whole reason. Like, if this game had been a draw or Giri had won it with the white pieces, the whole latter half of the tournament would have been different. But because Nepo just got such a convincing victory with black, it changed a lot. It changed the tiebreak and everything. And by the way, if anybody's looking at this position and wondering why you have to sack your queen, well, you're threatening to take the rook. And for example, the move rook h3 can be played, but then what you'll do is you'll bring your king around. It's really incredible. Like, for example, like this. And what you'll do is you'll end up sacrificing, and you're just winning here. You're going to win this pawn, and this endgame is just a win. You have to know your king and pawn endgames, which they do. So Nepo is perfectly capable of doing it with white and with black. And the last game that I wanted to show you is the second to last time that he or maybe the third to last time that Nepo played Magnus in a classical game. Their last classical game was 2019, I believe, in the Grand Chess Tour in Zagreb in Croatia. Magnus won that game. This was their game in 2017 in the London Chess Classic. And it was a weird one. It was like c3 because Jan plays Sicilian, so he's inviting, he's inviting e4 to try to make it a Sicilian defense. But okay, we have c3, d5, d4, and a symmetrical, it's actually funny, it's a symmetrical Slav, exchange Slav. Of course, Jan plays knight h5, super exotic, offers a repetition of moves. Magnus declines it. And it's a relatively solid game with an isolated pawn position. Pawn on d4 might be hanging in some lines, right? Queen to c2, h6, rook d1, bishop d7. Very solid setup. a3, rook c8. So far, so good. But we're talking about Jan, guys. We're talking about Jan. So what does Jan do? Rook e8. Maybe bishop f8 is coming to solidify the h6 pawn from sacrifice. But Magnus builds up some play here on his king side. He plays bishop f4. He's got, you know, this all these defenses. Of course, Nepo has his patented 30-minute time advantage somewhere there, and he plays b5 and b4. He's just going for it. We got the cowboy, b5, b4. Let's attack Magnus on the queen side. Takes, knight e5, and let's get his bishop. Of course, if we get his bishop, it's good. It's an attacking piece, right? But Magnus is improving his position. He's improving his position, and there's all these pieces. Maybe the rook is going to come to the party. And now Jan plays a move which I would never, like, I would never in a million years think about this move. Even though this pawn is hanging, all of my attention would be focused on this side of the board, which is why I'm not Nepo, which is why he's Nepo, and, you know, I'm a bozo who wears hoodies and talks about their moves. A5. Like, completely cold-blooded, just plays a5. And, you know, Magnus continues to improve his position, setting up a sacrifice. Nepo plays bishop to b4. And I really wonder if he had anticipated the move bishop takes h6. Because if pawn takes h6, which looks like the entire point, knight e4 is coming. And, for example, if bishop takes h6, bishop takes c3, well, Magnus can continue to sacrifice. But there is b takes c3, g takes h6, and, like, there is a big attack coming here. Maybe you have to play something like king h7 and give up the f7 pawn. But the thing is, this is why Jan makes this so difficult for his opponents. Because I guarantee that at this point, he's got a massive time advantage, and he's baiting his opponent into spending even more time making a bold decision. That's the thing about when you play really fast, and you're very tricky, and you're very creative, that is something that you do. And so Magnus misses his chance. He plays rook t3, plays one move slow, and now Jan is out here firing moves away on the queen side. Rook a1, bishop c2. Look at this maneuver. Like, look at this man. And then he just rotates the bishop back to safety, and a bishop has made it to the... Like, look at that. I don't think we appreciate that enough. Bang, bang, bang. Just, what? I know for them it's easy, but as a spectator, it's so fun to watch this. And now he invites Magnus to be aggressive again with his pawns. C4. And, knight d7 to try to trade. Knight c6, queen f6. Very strong. Sacrificing this pawn, but creating counterplay on the entire center of Magnus with the move knight to b6. And here disaster begins to strike. First of all, Magnus plays c5, forgetting that it can straight up be taken, as the interview goes. Rook c5. dc5, queen a1 check. Apparently Magnus forgot about this. He still has some pressure, but here, Magnus has to play c takes b6. He just has to play this and go a pawn down, but maybe hold. And instead, he plays queen c6, forking the rook and the knight. But here, Nepo has a move. And you can feel free to pause here and try to find the move for black. It saves the game. And it's just a very nice move. And, well, what's worth rook and the knight? You, but also a queen. Queen guards the rook via something known as X-ray defense. And even though the knight is hanging, the bishop is hanging. And that's it. And so we have takes, c6, c7, and Nepo just plays f6, brings the knight back, and he just wins the game. He just wins the game on the spot because he's up a piece. Yes, this pawn is close to promotion, but it will never get through this. e5, and slowly but surely Nepo will bring his king. And Magnus resigned the game. And what's interesting is that during this game, Magnus was actually ill during the end of the 2017 London Chess Classic. And one more fun thing about this game is this. After the game, they, of course, interviewed the players, and they had Jan up here, and Jan's name was spelled Ian Nepomniachtchi. Not Nepo, but Nempo. And I hope they only did that for this round, because this is the only interview I watched when I was looking and researching this game, but they called him Ian Nempo. So hopefully for the upcoming World Championship match, they learn how to spell his name. So what to say as we approach the match? On the one hand, we have the defending champion, Magnus Carlsen, who has been 2,700 since the year 2007. He has the highest rating of all time at 2881. He's frequently won the Triple Crown, Classical, Rapid, and Blitz World Championships. But if you look back at Magnus's previous opponents, Fabiano Caruana was a preparation nightmare. And that match was super high level at theory and the preparation element, and it was a tough challenge. But when it gets to Rapid and Blitz, it's not close. And the upcoming World Championship is 14 games of classical chess, different than the 12 that Magnus played against Fabiano, but there's still a Rapid and Blitz component. right? So there you have Magnus, who will play a lot of different openings and do a lot of different preparation, and he exploits some of the nuances of the repertoire. So, for example, Nepo plays the Grunfeld. Magnus has presented a lot of different ideas in the Grunfeld with the white pieces, so that might be a point of contention. Now, Ian Nepomniachtchi, on the other hand, he became a grandmaster in 2007. He entered the world elite in 2010. And according to a lot of people, Garry Kasparov, Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, they have all said in different interviews that he has made his greatest improvements in the past few years. In the past few years, we're talking about playing Magnus Carlsen, who has been at the top of chess for a decade now, right? They're saying that Nepo has made great strides. Nepo has always been an excellent rapid and blitz player, even in his classical chess, playing very quickly. I don't think we can take anything of the classical games between Ian and Magnus. I really don't. Because as you see, Magnus was ill. We're also talking about 2017. And the game that Magnus won in 2019, I don't think we're going to have a repeat of that, because that game was just not very, it just wasn't very well played by Ian. So I don't know. We have a totally blank slate where the players are very clearly evenly matched on rapid and blitz. Magnus invited Ian to help him for matches in the past. They have photos of them together. It's just very exciting. And honestly, Ian brings excitement in the sense of he will give good interview responses. He's going to be charismatic and talking to you. He also streams on Twitch. He's an open video game fan and football, soccer for my Americans, soccer fan as well. Everything about this match is going to be exciting. It's in Dubai. I mean, hello, it's in Dubai. That's going to be exciting. I hope that this lives up to his expectations, and this video is fully dedicated to giving you a better picture of who Ian is, why you should support him. Go follow him on all his different social medias. Let's get that man verified on Twitter, for God's sake. It's May 11th, 2021. Ian is not even verified on Twitter, and he's playing for the World Championship, so I'm pumped. This is going to be a fantastic match, and if you've made it this far in the video, and it's still early, I haven't made a match preview, but if it's approaching the match in November 2021 or afterward, the preview definitely is out. I will see you all very, very soon. Take care. Get out of here.